Hey guys, look at it, almost done, but since I think 25th of March this year, and now it's 13th of May, I've been struggling with making the motorcycle run, I mean the engine run and start. It was really crazy, and I started to become a bit hopeless during the time, because once the engine was in the frame, I connected the electric cables and pressed the start button. It didn't start at all. So I started to search for the trouble, and there were plenty. Because I'm inexperienced, I could have done many of the things with the engine out of the frame and save a lot of time, but we are learning every day, so next bike will be much easier, I believe. So what was the situation? First thing, which I also mentioned in the previous video, was the electric continuity from the battery negative terminal. In the previous video I mentioned the paint here, which prevented the battery to or the ground to get to the main frame and to the engine. So this had to be scratched to the bare metal, so that the minus and the ground gets to the frame. But it was not the whole thing, because the engine was painted as well, and the rest of the frame also, obviously. So when I pressed the start button for the first time, the starter motor was turning very slowly. So after some time I discovered that the continuity and the resistance from the negative terminal to the frame was around 600 ohms, which was a lot. So what I had to do was to get as low resistance as possible to this engine holder, which basically means that I had to scratch the engine, the frame here behind the tank. There are two screws through the frame, so I scratched that to the bare metal, and I had to scratch the frame and the engine block here to the bare metal to reach the negative of the spark plug, and to achieve 0.05 ohms of resistance, so that the spark was good. So that was first thing, and that was, I would say, very simple to discover. So that was one thing. Another thing was the right cylinder had very low compression. It had like 30, which is 30 psi, which was absolutely crazy. And I had to I basically made a very simple compression leak tester, which was a hose put through the spark plug hole and blowing compressed air into it to find out where it's leaking. And it was leaking through the piston rings, because the air was escaping from here, from the service hole. So I let it as it is. I checked some forums, and some people said just run it for some time and it will settle down. I did it like this because I knew that I didn't remove the pistons, and I didn't do anything with the crankshaft, so I was pretty sure that all this was correct. So compression here on the right cylinder was like 30. On the other side, on the left cylinder, it was like 90. So also very low. So, and it was escaping through the, on the other side, it was the air was escaping from the head gasket. So I removed the the cylinder heads again. You can do it with engine and frame. It's very easy and it's perfect. Thanks old Honda. You can do it with engine and frame. So I removed the heads, the cylinder heads, and found out that this Italian Athena head gasket, which I bought as a set, was a piece of crap. So I asked a local company which is making seals for vintage cars and bikes to make it for me. To my surprise, it was like 25 euros. So perfect price for both. So I put them there. The compression immediately improved. This one was still quite low, but it was like 60 psi, and on the other side the left cylinder was like 120. So that was good. I said to myself, okay, I can start it on one and then see what happens. So Athena head gaskets, no good, at least according to my experience. But still the bike didn't start. The engine was cranking, and nothing was happening. So I really became very frustrated. The sparks were good, but I came in the past month even to that point that I put the engine off the frame again, disassembled the backplate, checked the ignition, the timing chain and the timing again. I set up a slow motion high FPS camera with spark plug like this. The lid was out, and I checked. I made a slow motion movie to check if the spark goes on the right moment. It was fine. It was really a tough job. So I put the engine back again in the frame, filled it with oil, filled with water. Didn't start. One thing which I noticed was that the sparks were very wet right after a couple of cranks. So I again disassembled the carbs, checked everything. I found out that the float level in this right carb was quite high, so I checked the needle. The needle is a bit worn. The same on the other side. So I just made it work somehow. It's not overflowing now to the carbs, but it used to. I ordered new needles as well as the complete rebuild set. I'm still waiting for it, but the fact is that after checking the carbs, making them work somehow, I left these tubes off the engine and cranked the engine all the time. The starter motor was really almost burning. I had to check its temperature. It's a brushed motor, so if it has about 50-60 degrees centigrade, you have to stop and wait till it cools down. Took me a long time to do it, but I kept cranking, and gradually the compression, as the starter motor was turning the engine, was improving a bit. So after several, well, not several, but many attempts to start it, the compression on the left cylinder improved to 130, which was okay, psi. Also, while cranking and when the oil in the engine was pumped through the system, I discovered some leaks through this front gasket. So I drained the water again, removed the radiator, removed the lid, put some silicone here. All this could have been done with engine out of the frame. So it took me much more time when the engine was in the frame. I also discovered that with the tools I have, which is the battery operated drill, like this one, you can very easily crank the engine like this with a nut inserted and everything inserted here in the service hole. So next time I'm doing CX500, I will do all these tasks with the engine out of the frame, saving a lot of time, because this is a very strong drill. It's a 28 volts operated drill, and it can turn the engine, and you can check the compression very easily. I tried the electric drill, but no chance, it's too weak. But this one, if you have this, you can crank the engine. It's a perfect thing, and I'm glad I bought it in the past. So after solving all the leaks, all the carb issues, all the other things, and after being depressed a lot and thinking of the fact that I will disassemble the whole bike again and sell it for parts and leave it as it is, I just decided not to give up. And all of a sudden I basically accidentally switched off the choke and had a half throttle set on the throttle handle, on the throttle grip, and I cranked the engine and it started to make sparks and started to run. So all of a sudden the bike and the engine started to run. After running it for some long minutes, the compression on the left cylinder improved to 150, which is exactly the same value which was when I disassembled it. The compression on the other cylinder was 90, which is low, but I will have to run it and see after a couple of kilometers. There are some issues which have to be solved, and it is obviously the carbs, because all this seemed to be a carburation problem. So I will change the needle. It is also possible to do it with the carbs installed. You can do it like this. Take the bolts, take out the floats, change the needle, put it back, screw it. I don't think I will change the needles and the jets, and I will just change the gasket and the needle and see what happens. What else has to be done? There are some minor leaks below the engine on the bottom, but I don't think it's going to be an issue. It was standing here for one night and there is not a single drop yet, so I will probably leave it as it is. What else has to be done? And I will have to, after a couple of miles or kilometers, I will have to definitely check if water is not leaking into oil or vice versa, because I did some magic, let's call it, with hand tools to change the mechanical seal, and I really have to check if it's not leaking. I believe it's not, but I will see after I drain the oil from the engine, but here it looks fine. But I just took it for a test ride for 5 kilometers, so I will give it 20 or something like that and check the water, check the oil, change the oil, and after that I think I can call it done for now and see if I keep the bike or if I sell it. But I like the sound of it, so I believe I will keep it. So I will try to start the engine now. Again, the tank is filled with petrol, so theoretically with half throttle the bike should start. I would need 2 hands on this. Alright, it's done now. It's okay. So I will try to start the bike now. Oh, I have to also solder this, the contact for the brake switch. So as you can see, no choke, half throttle. Oh, let's try a choke.